Yeah, send it to Alan. Send the phone number to him.
Okay. Because the weather has been so cold that we believe the O-rings that seal up the motor will probably fail. And his engineers convinced him that they shouldn't launch. And he refused to sign the launch order, but he was overruled by his management. So the engineers made the right decision, management overruled them, and as a result, they signed off on the launch, and as a result of them signing off on the launch, what you saw in the video occurred. Because, yes, in fact, what happened was that those solid rocket motors, the O-ring failed because it was cold, hot gas escaped, caused the structure to puncture the external tank, and the shuttle blew up. And that's what killed the astronauts. So Alan McDonald tried to do the right thing. And he said what he believed, and he explained why, and he had data to back it up. It wasn't popular. And because it wasn't popular, his management decided, no, we're going to go launch because we think it's the right thing to do, and because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to launch. So the takeaways from that are, what you believe is important, you should say it even if it's not popular. And frequently leaders have to say things that aren't popular. Also, you want to do the right thing, not the easy thing. The easy thing anybody can do, but leaders have to do the right thing. And doing the right thing is inevitably more difficult than doing the easy thing. It takes longer. It might be more painful. It might be more stressful. But ultimately, doing the right thing is absolutely critical, and it's what you have to do. Okay. The other thing is, commitments are critical, and leaders have to be accountable. This is something that I learned early, and that I've never forgotten. And I really try to impress on people that I work with and teams that I lead. Commitments are important because they show your willingness to do what you say you're going to do. And doing what you say you're going to do is absolutely crucial if you're going to lead a team. And when I started on this shuttle program, so after the Challenger accident, they shut the program down, and we spent about the next 3 years working on design improvements for the engines that we built at the time. And the engines that we built at the time there were 44 of them, and they maneuver the shuttle when it was up in space, not from the ground to orbit, but all of them maneuvering up in orbit. So we spent the next 3 years making design improvements to those engines to make them better and make sure that they did not pose a catastrophic risk to the space shuttle. And that was a long process, but we made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I started out as a member of a large engineering team that was working on that program. And over time, I was elevated to lead that team and eventually brought that design into qualification and got it put aboard the shuttle for the next mission, which happened almost 3 years later, a little over 3 years after that accident that you saw. So you have to follow through. You have to acknowledge your mistakes because you're going to make them. And in the engineering world, and I know some of you are in the engineering world, the process kind of goes, you analyze what's going on, you design, then you test it. And based on the results, you might need to do some more analysis and some more design. Well, we went through that process many, many times, probably 100 times, to get to the right design ultimately. But you have to acknowledge your mistakes and you have to learn from them. Okay. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit here, and you can roll to the next slide, Emmanuel. I'm going to bounce around a little bit here because there was a lot going on at the time in the program, and back one. And like I said, I was part of a team, and I was a young. Thank you. I was a member of a team of probably 30 or 40 engineers of different backgrounds that were working on this program. And initially, I was just a member of the team, and I was working on design, and I was working on testing. But we had a number of us that were working in a development engineering group to really further this design. And because of my willingness to, I think, work hard and show some leadership, I was put in charge of a group of engineers. And I thought that was great, right? You know, a couple of years out of school, I'm in charge of an engineering group. Well, that's all well and good, but you don't necessarily learn in school how to be a leader and how to lead people. I always liked working with people, but I never really learned how to lead them. The CSUN engineering program was really good at putting us in teamwork situations, but I never really had led a large group. So there were some challenges there, and I kind of learned all of this by the seat of my pants, right? So in terms of, and what I'm talking to you about here, I didn't recognize all of these things initially. Some of these things I learned over a period of months or years when I was in this position and trying to get this job done. But as a leader, you need to set expectations for how the team is going to work. And we had design engineers and test engineers and analysis engineers and development engineers, and we had people writing test specs, and we had people doing all kinds of things. But the key thing is, if we were going to be successful, and we didn't have a strict timeline that we were working to, we just knew that our customer, Rockwell, needed us to get to a solution as fast as we possibly could. So it was important to set expectations right away for how the team was going to work, who was going to do what, how work was going to be conducted, how we were going to further and take positive steps towards our goal. And the ultimate goal was to create a better engine that was more robust, and it wouldn't fail. So that was the goal. How we were going to get there, we weren't sure initially. We set up some plans and we set up some milestones. And what I'll tell you is, when you set a goal in your mind, whatever it is, and sometimes it's crystal clear what it's going to be, and sometimes it's a little bit fuzzier. But regardless of what it is, you're going to set up some plans and some milestones to get there. And our plans were very detailed in terms of our design process and how we were going to test and how we were going to analyze and how we were going to establish whether we were making progress. But those plans changed. You have to be able to pivot. You probably heard the saying, goals are in stone and plans are in sand. And that's important because you have to be able to pivot on your plans. If you are rigidly stuck to your plans, you won't get to your goal. You have to be able to make adjustments based on things that you learn. And generally those are mistakes that you make or things that occur that were outside of your expectations, right? So the other thing I came to understand is that, and I didn't understand this until later on when I kind of took over leadership of the group, is that as a leader, you need to be willing to outwork everyone. When you're working with a team, generally you can expect that most folks are going to work less than you. And if you're not willing to put in the work and put in the extra time, your people aren't going to be willing to put in that extra time as well. So setting the example, and I go back to periods of time where probably for a few months at a time, we were testing 7 days a week, and we were testing a new design every day to figure out which design was going to give us the best solution. And we'd build some of these designs. We'd go out and we'd test 5 or 6 or 7 days in a row. Then we'd come back and do some more design work, and we'd go build some new parts, and we'd go out and we'd test 7 days in a row again. And there were a lot of long hours and a lot of weekends, but you have to be willing to do that work, set the example for your people. But the other thing you have to be able to do is when the team is working that hard, and our team was working very hard. We had a large group that were working, 60, 70-hour weeks to get this job done. You have to set time aside to disconnect for yourself, to kind of regroup and take a breath. And that's not only you, but if you're leading a team, you need to let your team members know that that's okay to do, because they need to disconnect too. People can't do their best work if they're constantly grinding. So go ahead to the next chart. So I laugh about this subject because this was something that wasn't easy. I'll admit freely, this was not something that was easy for me. I came out of school and I wasn't the best student. I didn't get the best grades, but I thought I was smart. And I didn't think I knew everything, but I thought I knew a lot. And I was immediately humbled when I got out into the working world in terms of how things really work, how you get things done, what's important, what's not important. I could analyze the life out of problems, but that's not what real work is necessarily about. And it was a very humbling experience for me when I first started to understand school was great, college was great. It gave me a good fundamental background in rocket propulsion and rocket science, but it didn't really prepare me for what I needed to be able to do to function in the working world. So my first message is, it doesn't matter how smart you are or how much you know about a subject, you can learn from everyone on your team. Everyone has a perspective that brings value. Everyone has a different experience, and you need those experiences on your team to round out your team. Because if you all think the same and you all are nodding your head when somebody says something, you're not going to get anywhere. You're doomed for failure. So you need to be able to learn from everyone and embrace all of those perspectives. The other thing that was tough for me, because I was an engineer, is to realize that I couldn't solve all the problems. Every time something came up along the way in our program, I didn't have all the answers. And I realized after not having the answers a few times and being embarrassed, that sometimes I just needed to get out of the way and let the people that knew more than I did or that had outside expertise solve the problems. Again, all of this was kind of seat of the pants learning. And it was not things that I necessarily recognized the way I can talk about them now, but things that became clearer later. The other part of it is I liked working with people, but I didn't know how to lead them. So in terms of being approachable or relatable, that was a little difficult for me because my personality was more kind of narrowly focused. And that's not something that a leader can be. Leaders have to be relatable. They have to be approachable, because if you're not, if your team members can't share freely with you and tell you what the things are that you're doing wrong or what we should be doing as a team differently, then you're not going to succeed. You have to have that ability to be relatable, be approachable, so your team members aren't afraid to come to you. We've all probably been in situations where we were part of a team and the leader was a dictator, or the leader was more of a, you go do this, you go do this, you go do this, and then report back when you're done. That doesn't work as well. You need to be approachable and you need to be able to be related to by your team members. And lastly, and this is something that took a long time for me also to realize, you need to be a servant to your team. Your team is looking to you as a leader to guide them and to help them along the way. They may have expertise that you don't have. They're not asking you to learn what they know. They're asking you to help them get their job done. They're asking you to help them be successful. And your job as a leader is to help your team be successful. Okay? You can go ahead to the next one. So I'm gonna send you another link for a video.
Oh,
Here, if you could put this up.
okay. Give me a sec. Let me put it on
Sure.
the browser.
I'd like to start it at 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Got you.
Yeah, take it back to 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
So let's see, 2 minutes and 50.
Oh yeah, 50. That's good. Can you all hear it?
Yeah. Fine.
Is a skill like any other. Is a practicable, learnable skill, and it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the day, you will get good at it. You will become a. Can everybody hear? If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Everybody wants to be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader. It doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And because it comes with great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you give away all the credit. When things go wrong, you take all the responsibility. That's not right. It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, it's yelling and screaming and taking over. You say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. Okay. They're not even responsible for Emmanuel, you can stop it at 4:13. What's your priority? Put their hands on their yeah, you can stop it now.
To the PowerPoint. What did you say?
So I hope you all heard that. There's a number of very important points that Simon Sinek made. One of those is that you are not in charge. You are responsible for the people that are in your charge, and that really is, I think, a very clear way of defining that as a leader, it's really all about people. And the people that you lead are ultimately going to determine your success if you're leading a team. If you're leading yourself, then you're not really leading anybody. But if you're leading a team, you need to focus on people because they're the ones that are going to make your success. When I say make your success, the team's success, right? You want to put people in the right roles and give them tools to do their job. And in the engineering world, that's pretty clear because we were able to take our designers with specific expertise and our analysts with specific expertise and our test people with specific expertise and to put them in a position to do the things that they did well to help us be successful. The interesting thing about it is when you put people in the right position, the right role, and give them the right tools, leaders will rise. And you'll see people that you wouldn't have otherwise expected to rise to a leadership or take leadership. They'll do that because they feel confident that they have what they need to be successful. You want to empower people. That means give them responsibility and give them guidelines for what you're looking for, and then communicate. As a leader, that's one of your primary jobs is to communicate. Everyone within the organization, not everybody in the organization needs to know everything, but everyone needs to know what they need to know to do their job. So your primary responsibility is to communicate. Now, you can be a great leader. You can be very good technically. You can be very good in management, whatever it might be, but your people won't care. They won't care how much you know about a particular subject until they know how much you care about them. And that, again, it puts the focus back on people. People need to know that you care about them and their success before they can really give all of their energy to the team, right? And then as a leader, you need to show what you need to model cooperation. You need to show what cooperation looks like. If there's conflicts, you need to resolve conflicts. Now, I was not much in terms of conflict resolution. You know, I always sort of figured, hey, you know, everybody on my team is an adult. They'll figure it out. But that quickly degenerated, and with a whole lot of strong opinions, which engineers tend to have, there was a lot of headbutting, and we got into a lot of conflict, and it wasn't productive conflict. So as a leader, you need to be able to resolve conflicts between you and people on your team, or between people on your team that are having conflicts with each other. You need to give people feedback as to how they're doing. Everyone has the right to know whether they're doing the job in a way that's going to further the team's, you know, get the team further towards their goals. And if they're not, you're doing them a disservice by not giving them feedback. And you need to check in with everyone a lot to establish trust. That goes back to communicate, communicate, communicate. You can go ahead to the next chart. I'm sorry, which chart is up?
So it says mentors equals success.
Okay, great. So I was very fortunate early in my career that I was able to work with some outstanding engineers and some outstanding managers and some people that were very good at what they did. And as a result of that, it made me better. And every opportunity that I had, I sought out their advice.
So Alan, are you still there? You cut off. Might be something with your VPN. Let's give him a sec, guys. Let's see if he can hop on in a few seconds.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. I don't know what happened. So early on, I realized how important it was to seek counsel from people that were experienced. And when I first started working on, like I said, I was a member of the team, and until I was elevated to lead this team in the last couple of years to close on this design and get it qualified for the space shuttle program. But this has stuck with me ever since. You want to seek out people who have done what you want to do and be a sponge. That goes for all aspects of your life. It might be in your personal life. It might be in your church. It might be in your chosen profession. Whatever it might be, seek out people that have done what you want to do and be a sponge. Ask questions. Spend as much time with them as you can and learn from them. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because guess what? All of those people that you look up to as leaders, they were in your position at one time, and they had other people that they looked up to as leaders, and they did exactly the same thing. So don't be afraid to do that. Also, read, and always be in learning mode. To this day, I read quite a lot. I'll be honest, when I was in college and I had to read to get my degree, for courses to get my degree, I didn't do much outside reading. But after I got out of college, I went back to reading. I highly recommend, leaders are readers. You might have heard that. I want to put in a quick little plug here. The book that I'm reading now is not a leadership book. It's a book by a Nobel Prize-winning economist. His name is Daniel Kahneman, and the name of the book is Thinking Fast and Slow. And what he's writing about is how we make decisions. And we have two systems in our brain for making decisions. System one, which is intuitive and thinks very fast. It's kind of our off the top of our head thinking. And then system two is more deliberate and is more analytical. But I'm probably halfway through this book and understanding now a lot more about how people make decisions, because it also talks about the biases that we have and how each of our biases tends to influence our decisions. So I'm going to recommend that book, but in general, read. Read as much as you can get your hands on, and always be in learning mode. The author is Daniel Kahneman, Kahneman, and the book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. And I'll put it up in the chat afterwards. The other thing that I would recommend to all of you is think of yourself, treat yourself like a business, and create your own personal board of directors. I didn't do this early in my career. I did it a little bit later in my career, but the people that I had on my board of directors were CEOs of aerospace corporations. And one of them was a NASA astronaut a space shuttle astronaut who was a NASA administrator. One of them was an Air Force colonel who was also an astronaut. Another one was a businessman who had created a large consulting business, consulting with the U.S. government. And what I actually did was I reached out to these individuals, and I was very humble about it. And I said, look, I admire you, and I would like to be able to take your counsel. Would you consider being on my personal board of directors? And the four of them agreed. And what I did with each of those individuals, probably every 2 to 3 months from that point forward, I would speak with each of those individuals. Sometimes it was individually, sometimes it was in larger groups. And I would talk to them about what my goals were, what my plans were to achieve those goals, and how I was doing. And they would help guide me, but they would also help keep me accountable, because they would come back and tell me, hey, wait a minute, Alan, when we talked 3 months ago, you said you were going to do this. Did you do this? Well, Bill, I didn't quite do that. I started doing that, but then I got off on a tangent. So that accountability that I had, having that personal board of directors, was extremely valuable. So for all of you, even whether you're still in school or whether you're out of school and out in your chosen profession, start to put together a personal board of directors of people of different backgrounds that you respect, that you believe can help guide you in your life and in your career, and let them be accountable to them and see where it takes you. I think you'll find you'll get great results from that. So go ahead. Let's go ahead to my last slide here, and I'll kind of close with a few final comments. So we have the summary up. Okay. So I'll leave you with a few thoughts. People are looking for leaders to follow. Leaders can be found everywhere. Probably most of our first interaction with a leader was when we were very young, and that leader was our mom or our dad, or an uncle or a grandmother or a grandfather. That's usually our first experience with leadership. But you can find leaders everywhere. And when you focus on people, when you're leading a team and you focus on people, leaders will rise. The other thing is, and I was absolutely guilty of this, some of you may be as well, most people tend to gravitate to people who think like we do, because that's comfortable. You can have a comfortable conversation that thinks like you do, and there's no conflict, and you can just talk, and you can share ideas, and you can just kind of nod your head. But in reality, we all learn more from people who are different from us. And that's critical to when you put together a team, is putting together a team of people with different backgrounds, with different perspectives that don't all think alike. That's how you become successful. Do you think that Steve Jobs at Apple, when he was at Apple, do you think he hired people that were all like him? No. Steve Jobs hired people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different parts of the country and different countries to bring them all together because he wanted constructive ideas on his team. And he was brilliant at it, right? So don't be afraid to align yourself and associate with people that are different from you because you can learn from them and they can learn from you. Celebrate your successes. When a team has a success or an individual has a success, celebrate it and celebrate it big. Make it a big deal. On the other side, when you have a failure, celebrate failure, right? There was a story that Thomas Edison found 3,000 ways that a light bulb wouldn't work. And if someone asked him about that, and he said, yep, I found 3,000 ways that it won't work. I haven't found the way that it worked yet, but I found 3,000 ways that it won't work. Learn from your failures, celebrate your failures, but move on constructively from them. And then probably the last thing that I'll leave you with is leadership is about making choices. And usually the options are difficult. That's why you're the leader. That's why a lot of people don't want to be the leader because they don't want to make the decision. If you're the leader, do your homework, gather the information you need, and make a decision. Don't agonize over it, make a decision. Make sure that you have enough information. Don't let yourself get inundated by too much information. Make sure you have enough information and make a decision. Normally, 90 or 95% is good enough because you're never going to get to 100 and you're going to spend a lot of time agonizing over that last 5%. Gather the information, take the knowledge of your team, the best recommendation that they have, your knowledge, and make a decision. So what I've covered with you here today is not all things that I learned in that 3-year period of leading that space shuttle rocket engine program to qualify the new hardware. I didn't learn all of this then. I didn't realize some of what I had learned until after the fact. And many of you will go through the same thing. You'll go through experiences in your life where you'll recognize where the leadership principles are, and some of the leadership principles you won't recognize until after the fact. Don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. Be willing to make mistakes, but make a decision. You're the leader. You have to make a decision. It's up to you because nobody else will. Thank you.
Awesome. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Alan. We really appreciate your time. So we're gonna move on to the Q&A session this time. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and ask. Go ahead, Alexis.
Can I go?
Why not? Go ahead. Try it. Ask your question.
All right, cool. Yeah, Alan. So let's see. What's like? So we had a previous speaker, and she was from India. She was saying the same thing about celebrating success. I'm a very pragmatic guy. I like to see what the real world application. I understand, like, you have to make sure that everybody is encouraged to do well. I feel like a lot of people are a lot of times encouraged to not mess up, and I think that's a good change. You know, but what have been the specific effects that have happened when implementing that?
So when we first started on our journey on this program, we set up the team and we had regular meetings. And initially we met every few days, but then it was every week and or so typically. And one of the things that we realized, and we didn't realize it right off, but we recognized that we had to celebrate successes and we had to celebrate failures. So as a specific part of that agenda, we would talk about what the specific successes had been over the past week or the past month, and we would talk, and the people that actually were instrumental in those successes, and we talked about the failures, because we wanted the failures to be a teaching experience. Well, what we found is that people who were maybe a little bit more, I'll call them the bookworms, maybe the typical engineer that just kind of like to sit there and do their work and not be bothered, they were becoming more vocal, and they were becoming more communicative, because they realized that being a bigger part of the larger group was going to create successes and was going to get them some recognition. So by making a specific point to celebrate the successes and the failures, we took some of the people that otherwise kind of would have stayed in their shell. We helped to bring them out of their shell, and they became more of an integrated part of the team, as opposed to somebody that you just gave work to and they gave it back when they were done. So the real effect on the team was substantial, because if you know anything about engineers, they tend to kind of like to stay in their lane. They're not necessarily the most social. People, but we were able to better integrate the team and make those people more socially and more involved in everything that was going on.
And this, you're saying, was due to several. I'm sure there were several reasonings, because people have different motives. But you did mention that when you celebrate people's success, they see a return on their hard work that otherwise they wouldn't have really saw.
No, you know what, you put it more succinctly than I did. So good for you. They absolutely saw a clear connection between the work that they were doing, the value that it provided for the team, and they got some recognition. They may not have initially been interested in recognition, but I haven't met anybody that doesn't at least appreciate some recognition. Some people are a little more embarrassed by it than others, but it really served to raise the awareness amongst the team members as to what everybody was doing and where the successes were happening. And on the same note, the failures, we celebrated the failures because we wanted everybody's input to move forward on what the next steps were. So we shared everything.
That's amazing. No, yeah, I mean, I'll talk forever if you let me, so I'll let somebody else go in for sure.
Anyone else have a question? I mean, you can go ahead.
Okay, Addie. So earlier, sir, you were talking about do what's right, even if it may not be very popular, and how you knew what you wanted to do from a very young age. I was like that myself. I knew that I wanted to go into the field that I'm in now since I was about 11 years old. But it's also one of the most unpopular fields on planet Earth. It's ADA compliance, and it's not very well known. You may not even know what that is. But in any case, it is one of the most unpopular fields on planet Earth. And just a little background, I run my own business, but I don't even have a business degree. I went to college for 2 years straight out of high school. That was one of my failures. I have numerous health problems, and they kicked in, and I was forced to drop out of college. So I think really my question is, if you're working in an unpopular field and trying to do what's right, even if it may be unpopular, do you think lack of formal training affects your ability to eventually achieve that successful end that you want to get to as far as the impact that you make?
So I will tell you, is it Constance? Is that your name?
Or Addie.
Or Addie. So okay, Addie, I will tell you, I know a lot about ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you.
And
it's very rare that I find somebody that does.
I know a lot about ADA for a couple of reasons. Number one, my wife has been in the health insurance business for 25 years. And the other reason is because I work with business owners, and business owners have a lot of challenges. And the field that you're talking about, ADA compliance, is very complex. The regulations are constantly changing, very hard to keep up with. And there are some very smart people that I know that spend their lives helping businesses remain, get into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and stay in compliance. So going back to your question, I knew that if I wanted to work in aerospace, I needed to get a degree in engineering. I can't tell you that you need a degree specifically to go into the ADA field, but I can tell you there are the breadth of what ADA covers. I'm confident that you can probably find, and you might look into this, you might look into internships. Have you ever looked into internships with organizations?
I have, but most of them you have to be in college to, apply and or qualify for acceptance. So.
Okay, and you said you did have a couple of years of college, right?
Yes, and I have my own LLC, which I'm currently working to turn into what's called an S corporation, because that will afford me more maneuverability and opportunities down the road.
So if you're Addie, if you're thinking that you're not really interested in going back to college, there may be opportunities for you. You might look online and see if there's any certificate programs. You might be able to find some online certificate programs that you could enroll in that would give you more of the knowledge that you need to be able to operate in the ADA space.
Yes, I am.
I haven't looked into that specifically. That's not my area of expertise.
Right.
But I think probably find some certification programs that would get you some of the knowledge to be able to actually work in that area. And the other thing I would suggest is, do you know people that are either attorneys or employment people that are working in that area now?
I recently was actually interviewed by a student that's getting his doctoral dissertation in sociology through Socrates University, which for those of you who don't know, they have one of the biggest ADA study programs on their end of the country. The biggest places for these types of programs are Socrates, Berkeley, California, and of course Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. being the political hub is also the ADA studies hub. I do have one certification from UAB. I actually took the last ADA certification program that they offered before their professor in that field retired, and then it was shut down. But I do have that certification, which I got 2 years ago.
So I would be pretty certain with the volume of information that's available on the Americans with Disabilities Act online that you can probably find some programs to get you the basic knowledge that you need. I'll tell you, I give you a lot of credit. You're going into a field that is constantly changing and is very complicated. You could have chosen a lot simpler profession.
Well, the reason I know this is your show and I don't mean to take away from anybody else, but I will say this: the reason I chose this field out of all the fields that you could possibly choose on planet Earth is because I literally live this field. I live with a disability. I'm on SSDI, Social Security Disability Income, and so I live this stuff and I see it every day. And I'm thinking, there's got to be a better future out there than what we have now with policy and all that stuff.
So I would, my suggestion to you, Addie, would be look online, see if there's any certificate programs, and make a few phone calls to employment attorneys, because generally employment attorneys are pretty knowledgeable about ADA, and you might be able to get some guidance from them on where to go to further your knowledge base.
That was interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, Adi. And Adi is actually going to be speaking on your L platform in 2 weeks, right, Adi?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal the show, but that's continuing my education is one thing that does is important to me. I'm just not in the position to do formal college programs at the moment. That's why I asked. So.
Right. Thank you for asking, though. That's fine. She'll be talking about her experiences in 2 weeks. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely come through. So does anyone have any other questions for Alan?
I do.
Go ahead, Viri.
So first of all, Alan, thank you much for giving us that insight of your story, and I can understand that your how do you call it, your journey through your career was pretty difficult and genuine in that sense. And so my question is that well, let me first give you some insight first in my story personally, so you can understand a little bit of where I'm coming from. So ever since I was little, I wanted to be a fashion designer, but I was always this little girl who never wanted to, like, come out of her shell, if you can say. But so basically I'm going into this field of counseling for kids in a place setting as in a school, and also a side career in motivational speaking. So my question is, how do you find those people of your board directors? Do they have to be like successful people, or people who are on that track?
Well, so if you're interested in counseling kids, I would think that in a board of directors, you'd look for people that are in your field, that have some experience. Are you talking about school age kids, or like teenagers, or?
Right now, I haven't decided yet, so I'm open to anything, but preferably from middle to high school.
So what I would suggest is, and this is what happened for me. I didn't from day one pick out a board of directors. What I did was, over the course of my career, I interacted with people that I grew to respect, and that I felt I could have an open and honest conversation with about what was going on in my life, what my challenges were, what my goals were. So what I would suggest to you is, don't try to force it. As you're starting up your career in this new field, you'll become acquainted with, and you'll get to working with people from different backgrounds. As you're working with people, get a sense of who you click with and who you feel you can have an open and honest conversation with, who you feel like is really truly interested in you and your success. And over a period of time, develop that board of directors. It might take you a few years. Don't
Yeah,
force it.
so if any,
You'll know the people that you can interact with. And again, it might not necessarily be, there might be somebody that you work with that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, but they make you uncomfortable in a good way because they push you and they make you stretch.
yeah, thank you. And if is there a possible chance for, like, for you to be in a difficult field and where you're not accepted, should one stay in that same place of where they're being rejected or not?
Well, that's kind of a tough question. I think we all want to be accepted and respected for what we do. And if we're not the best at it in the world, that's okay. We should be respected for the effort that we put into it. So for me in my life, if I've come across people that don't respect the effort that I put in, even if the result isn't perfect or as good as I'd like it to be, if I encounter someone that doesn't respect the effort I put in, I move on, because I don't have time for that kind of negativity to bring me down. Is that kind of the direction you're going?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
That's really wonderful. So Alan, I actually do have a question for you. And I noticed that you put emphasis on being approachable. So I would like to ask you, how can we become more approachable?
So, Emmanuel, the way you smile, you shouldn't have a problem being approachable.
I'm saying for everyone. Thank you.
So being approachable is it's partly how you carry yourself. It's partly the smile that's on your face. It's partly the fact that you're open and your arms aren't crossed, right? So it's the body language, but it's also people will decide whether you're approachable or not fairly quickly after having a few interactions with you. If you listen, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? We should listen at least twice as much as we talk. So if your body language is open and you're willing to listen and you honestly and fairly do that, then people will think of you as approachable. If somebody comes up to you and you got a scowl on your face and your arms are crossed and you say, well, what do you want? That's not approachable. And what's going to happen in the future is that person isn't going to want to have an interaction with you. When you're leading a team, you have to have everybody be willing to come to you with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right? No matter what's going on, you need your team to come to you. And I kind of did a 180 early on in this program when I started leading the team, because I realized I had to change my attitude towards people and how I interacted with them. So I did it. I started smiling. I started opening up. I started listening more than I talked, because I tended to talk more than I listened. When you talk, all you hear is what you already know, right? You only learn when other people talk. So you have to be willing to do that. That's a big part of being approachable. Smile. That's the first part.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Anyone have any other questions? Because I have a ton of them. I'm just trying to see if anyone has any before I dive into mine. Chanel, it looks like you're talking, you're muted. We can hear you, Chanel. Maybe try typing the question in the chat and I will go ahead and focalize it for you. So let's give Chanel a sec, guys. So while she's typing the question, does anyone else have a question during this time?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How are the Dodgers doing?
The Dodgers are, it's gonna be funny to you, but I don't watch sports. I play sports, but I don't watch sports.
I had to ask. I'm a big Dodgers fan, and the game started a couple of hours ago.
Oh, damn. So if anyone else knows this call, just shout it out.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
for now, I'm gonna ask my question as we wait for Chanel to type it out.
Sure.
But let's see. Right now, you're in financial services, right?
Say again.
You're in financial services, correct? As of now.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, what's the main difference you have found between leadership in financial services and in the aerospace industry?
So, not as much as you would think. When you change industries, like any major change in your life, you're constantly learning new things. And when you're in that learning mode, like I talked about earlier, you need to be humble because
Right.
you don't know everything, and you can't know everything, and you have to be willing to be a sponge. So, having learned what I learned from my prior experience in aerospace, it wasn't very hard for me to be humble and just sort of dive in and get back into the learning mode. Another aspect that isn't really much different that you might think would be making decisions, gathering information and making decisions. Regardless what field you're in, you need to gather information to make intelligent decisions. And I learned over a long period of years how much information is really needed to make a decision and how much information is too much information. So when I moved into financial services, it just became sort of a matter of learning, okay, how much information is enough information to make a decision to help one of my clients? I knew that in engineering. I had to learn it. I had to learn it in financial services. So that part is not very different. Celebrating successes, it's exactly the same. Our team celebrates successes, individual successes and team successes. I wouldn't say that we celebrate failures, but we learn from failures, right? And so regardless of what field you're in, you have to learn from your failures because you can't afford to make the same mistake again, right? That's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping to get a different result.
Wonderful. So it looks like Chanel just asked her question. Thank you, Alan, for answering that. So
Sure.
we're gonna move on to Chanel's question. It says,
I see it.
okay, go ahead.
Yourself and your fellow, what are the top 3 values you see in entry-level professionals that makes them stand out or that you can already tell will be successful? Okay. I wouldn't say these are necessarily the top, Chanel, but I'll give you some of the ones that are most important and that have the most value, that I see have the most value. You need to be able to look people in the eye and speak to them with your eyes. You don't want to look away. You don't want to hem and haw. You need to speak clearly, and you need to speak talking directly with people, because that establishes trust. And trust is fundamental. If you can gain the trust of someone that you're talking with, whether it's a coworker or someone on your team or someone in your church or wherever it might be, if you can gain that trust, now you have the basis for a relationship. If you can't establish that trust, it's a lot less likely that that relationship is going to go forward. So for entry-level professionals, practice, if it's not, and it's generally it's not comfortable, practice looking people in the eye and speaking to them. And speak to them with your eyes too, but practice speaking directly and with really, really good eye contact. Don't look away. And I'll tell you, what I'm telling you now, I couldn't do it when I was an entry-level professional. I thought I learned a lot. I thought I knew what I was doing. But when I got to interviews, I had trouble looking that interviewer straight in the eye. I'd look them in the eye for a few seconds and then I'd look off to the side. That doesn't show trust. Practice doing that. Okay. The other thing is have confidence, but don't be cocky. Don't act like you're full of yourself and you're terrific, but be confident in who you are and what you know. Okay? Confidence is something else that builds trust. And it's something that, at least when I was coming out of college, not very many of us had. So sometimes confidence, if you don't really have the level of confidence in yourself that you'd like, sometimes you need to stand in front of a mirror and talk to yourself. Pretend that mirror is the person on the other side of the desk or the other side of the conference table that you're going to be talking to. Talk to yourself. Practice that interaction and start to establish that confidence. And you know what? It's a lot easier to be confident if you smile. So I mentioned smiling a lot, but it's really important in terms of leadership. So look people in the eye, speak to them directly, be confident in who you are and what you know, but don't be cocky. All right? And use simple language. I used to think, when I first got out of college, I thought that the more complicated I could talk, the better off I was going to be, because I was going to be thought to be smart. No. Smart people make complicated things simple. So speak simply. Don't try to throw in a bunch of extra words. Speak simply. Those are three things. I don't know if they're the top three, but I think those are three valuable areas that, as an entry-level professional, will help you make the right impression, establish trust, and I guess I'll throw in one other thing. It's okay to tell a story if it illustrates who you are. If you have a story that really illustrates who you are as a person, your attitudes, your work ethic, whatever it might be, it's okay to tell a story, even if the story is a little bit hokey. Okay?
Wow. Thank you,
Yeah.
Adam.
Again, I didn't do any of these things when I was an entry-level professional.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna implement some of these tips in my personal life as well. And Alan, I do have another question for you too. But before I get to my question, does anyone have any question in mind?
Yeah, Chanel asked one more question. Do you think you should establish respect before trust? I think that trust and respect tend to come together. Respect is something that is earned. Trust is also earned, and you earn both of those by how you how you communicate with people, how you look them in the eye. So Chanel, I think you establish respect and trust kind of coincidentally, kind of, together.
Looks like she's typing. Says, thank you so much. Cool. So Alan, I know that you have a very busy schedule with all your achievements and hard work. So I would like to ask you, how do you manage your time? How would someone manage their time more effectively? Especially college students, because most college students, they don't really know how to manage their time. So what do you do to manage your time?
So that's an interesting question. How I've managed my time has changed a lot over the years. And generally what I do is I have a four box matrix. And some of you may be familiar with this. On one axis is the task, the importance or urgency of the task, And well, let me rephrase that. What I do is I look at important and urgent, right? Things that are not important or urgent, they generally fall off the radar, at least for a while. I may keep a separate list of things that are going to elevate themselves to important or urgent, but generally what I prioritize is there are a lot of things that we have in our lives that may be important. You know, we've got to go pay our taxes, but they're not urgent because that's going to happen 3 months from now, or they may be urgent, right? It has to be something that absolutely has to be done now, or perhaps someone will get hurt, right? So what I try to do is focus the bulk of my time on those things that are urgent and important, both, right? And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just do a 4-box matrix, and I'll do this maybe every week or two, and I'll put down the key things in the appropriate box, because some things just aren't as high a priority as other things. And I will work through those items kind of methodically. First, the urgent items that are urgent, then the urgent items that are important, then the important items that are urgent, then the important items that are important. And I'll just sort of work my way through it. And interestingly enough, sometimes some of those things will fall off. Things that were important are no longer become important, or things that are urgent are no longer urgent because some other circumstances changed. And then I'll keep a list of things that are kind of below that level that I think may be elevated to that level, so that I can bring them on. So I'm constantly prioritizing my time based on what's urgent and important.
That makes sense. I agree with that method 100%, because you should definitely focus on what's urgent first before anything else. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah. So the other thing I will tell you is things that are important in my day. I used to just kind of fit them in, but now I've taken to scheduling them, and maybe it's a half-hour block of time where I want to do a particular task that is important, and I don't want it to go out to the next day or the day after or the day after that. I actually find now more than ever that I'm scheduling blocks of time in my calendar where I used to just think, oh yeah, that particular thing, oh, I'll get it done sometime tomorrow. No, guess what? It won't get done. Circumstances will take over. Something will hijack that time. Emails will hijack my time. Phone calls will hijack my time. Whatever it might be, something on LinkedIn might hijack my time. But if I schedule that time, I focus on doing that particular thing at that time, and I'm more productive doing that.
Right, that's true. And guys, I actually use Google Calendars to schedule out my time. So if you haven't checked it out, check that out. From personal experience, I agree with what Alan is saying.
Yeah. And a lot of people that I interact with are using Google Calendar, and they say, hey, just go out to my calendar, find an available time, and book a slot. It works very well. For me, my days are so fluid that my blocks of time that I have available are moving around, and I could put my calendar up there for a week that would show available blocks, and the next day a bunch of those blocks have changed. So I haven't made the shift to the same type of calendaring arrangement that you're talking about. I'm just not sure how it's going to work for me.
Got you, Alan. Thank you.
So I have to say, somebody put up Dodgers are up 8-2 in the top of the fifth. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you. So any other question?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, Alan Frankel. thank you so much, first of all. And the next one is like, for example, you talk about like, we need to learn when we failed and everything. What is the best advice for people that are constantly failing, well, to stop them, to do not put barriers on themselves and don't give up?
So, let me start out by saying, failing multiple times means that you're continuing to try and not giving up, right? So if you're continuing to try and not giving up, you're not failing. You're just finding a way that something doesn't work. So I would say, and if we're just talking generalities, can you guys see me?
No.
Can you
No,
hold on a second? Oh, hold on.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm not worried about the video. So, if you're just talking generalities, Richard, and you've got a particular task or you've got a goal or something, and you're trying different ways to hit it, and it's not working. If you're not getting where you want to go, at a certain point, it makes sense to stop and get some outside perspective, get some outside input from other people that either might have done what you want to do or have done related things, and find out how they have been successful. It's frustrating to keep trying something and trying different things and not getting the result you want. So at a certain point, you need to take a step back. Don't give up, just take a step back.
Okay.
And be willing to take guidance and input from other people, because you'll be surprised if you may be. And I'll just give you an example that I found in my life, that's something that happened to me. I was working on a project, and it just wasn't. This was probably 20 years ago, and it wasn't going where I wanted it to go. And I just couldn't break it loose. I couldn't make progress. I couldn't get the result that I wanted. I was working with some people that were really good, but we just couldn't make it happen. So I was home one night. I was sitting having dinner with my wife, and I was frustrated. And I was talking to her about what was going on. And my wife does not have a technical background. She's not an engineer. She went to college, but she studied business, and she's been in healthcare. But I was talking to her about what was going on and my frustration, and I don't remember specifically what she said, but she said something that triggered something in my mind. And I thought, wait a minute, I can go do this. And I went back the next day, got with my team, took a different approach to what we were doing, and it worked. My wife doesn't know engineering. She's not a rocket scientist, but she had an outside perspective that had value and actually helped me solve a problem. So go find people that have done what you want to do and see what they've done. Or alternatively, you know what? Just get outside perspectives of people that you respect, because sometimes people from the outside can see things that you don't see. And that's what my wife did. She saw some things that I couldn't see.
That's interesting, really interesting. Thank you so much. I have like a better view now. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, amazing.
I just wanted to give a little input. This kind of reminds me of this one situation that a friend of mine had, where he was in Vegas, and there was one person without a mask. Now, this is the walkway of Vegas, where there's so much space. But because one person didn't have a mask at the time, the people around them were really freaking out. And he made the point that, a lot of times when you're in that kind of, and when you have a mindset that's in the macro, macro view, sometimes you get lost in it. There was a bunch of space just everywhere else. and you couldn't really see it through that perspective. You'd have to be a couple of feet away to kind of see the craziness kind of occurring, you know? And I think that's kind of related to having that outside view, the step back. All right, like okay, what's going on really, opposed to
Yeah.
what I'm viewing, you know, from up close.
Well, as opposed to reacting, right? Which is what a lot of people did, right? You're absolutely right. You have to take in all of the circumstances around you. I'll give you a perfect example. And this is an old story. There was a semi truck driving in LA, and he thought he had enough clearance to get.
Alan, you cut off. Actually, you're muted right now. So let's give Alan a sec, guys. Alan, are you still there?
He's still on here, but for some reason his phone's muted or something. His microphone is muted on him.
Yeah.
And he may not be
Yeah,
able to.
he's some difficulties.
Technical difficulties. All right, so while we wait for Alan, Alexis, you want to tell them about the Lead Series event?
Yes. So I believe I mentioned it in the previous event, but we actually have an upcoming event where it's going to be a little bit more focused in on leadership. This is a more in-depth event. You're going to have 3 speakers and one that are both speakers and entrepreneurs. We will have Felicia, a founder of Higher Minds LLC. This will be Felicia Young. We will also have Doug Dilling, who is a businessman in real estate and actually the head representative of a fraternity, the Phi Kappa Theta fraternity, that our CEO was actually currently is. He's going to be an you know, when you, I'm so sorry. What is it called when once you're done with it? It's
Once you're done with what specifically?
being a member in the fraternity.
Alumni.
Alumni, yes, sorry. But he will be an alumni soon of the Phi Kappa Theta fraternity. And then we'll have Steve Hopkins as well, who is involved with the Jordan River Group, which is a leadership group, where, not a group, but essentially a company that does something very similar to us. They do it on a larger scale, for sure. So you'll be actually able to kind of compare the answers that they have. So having well thought out questions through an event like that would be very beneficial if you guys are trying to get a more in-depth understanding of leadership.
So yeah, guys, that's Alexis. Thank you, Alexis, for sharing the details about that. And I believe it's time to call it a day for this event. Sorry about all the technical difficulties. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. And thank you all for coming. You all have a wonderful day.
See you guys.